And so we move to our festive evening service. We turn backwards in our prayer book, but forward in our observation of the year to page 389. 389. And we are reminded that tonight, far away, yet close to our hearts, the crops ripening and growing softer, the promise of harvest fulfilled, the sun warms again the lands of our ancestors. Now the vision of Torah, the world at peace and growing gentler, the promise of goodness fulfilled, the loving heart lies open to the mind. From Sinai we received Torah. Ki Mitzion.
Ki Mitzion tetzei Torah. Ki Mitzion tetzei Torah. Udevar Adonai mitzvah.
And so on this festive night we turn back again. It seems our people's way as we move through this, certainly our way this evening, as we move backwards in our prayer book to move forwards with our observance to page 384 as we kindle these lights of Yom Tov. For those who gathered in the courtyard just a few moments ago, we noted how fortunate we were to move from Kodesh to Kodesh. But today is certainly still Yom Tov. And so I'd like to invite Moshe Rabbeinu to come and light the Yom Tov candles for us. Moshe is not a gendered term.
This Moshe
Rabbeinu.
I was looking over my shoulder. Who? I feel naked, not in my costume. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Yom Tov.
Amen.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach, one and all. We turn forward to the Chatzi Kaddish on page 392, and we rise.
Yitzkadash merabah, amen. Almighty Rachuteh, Yamlich Malchuteh, V'chayechon v'yomechon, Chayetecho Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, Uvizman Karev. נשתבח, נתפאר, נתרומם, ונעשה ויתעלה, 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 שמי קודשם הוא, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירה בעלמה, ואמרו Amen.
As we remain standing, I remind you, as I'm going to do a number of times this evening, that this is an anniversary of us standing. Not necessarily in front of the ark, but what the ark represents. What the mountain in our courtyard reminds us of, a mountain. A group of individuals who came and stood. And so my question to you is, why is it that if tomorrow is the anniversary, we stand tonight? We study tonight. Why? It's a real question. The dip head's hanging on the wall in my office. We celebrate the eve. We certainly do that. But that's not the reason why we stand tonight. We could do that in an hour, not in 5. And certainly not by staying up all night. So why do we stand all night? We stand all night. We study all night. We sharpen our minds through the night so that we don't miss the opportunity to be there physically or spiritually in the morning. It takes effort to be present. And so as we move into our call to prayer and on into the Ma'ariv Aravim, we're going to use a melody popular in our family services which charges us to be present. 394. Certainly ready ourselves to stand at Sinai's foot. Ma'ariv Aravim.
Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Hooray, hooray! Laila, Golel, Omid Nefoshet, Golel, Omid Nefoshet, Nefoshet Mimneho. Roll into dark, roll into light, light becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei Yom V'Layla, Golel Omid Nefoshet, Golel Omid Nefoshet, Nefoshet Mimneho. Dark, roll into light, light becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, light becomes day, day turns to night.
Sinai was, please be seated. Sinai was only the beginning. The Torah has never ceased to grow. In every age it has been purified and enlarged. It has a permanent core and an expanding periphery. It expands as the horizon of our vision grows. Nor are God's revelations confined to Israel. God has been the inspiration of the great and the good among all the families of the earth. God loves, and guidance reaches out to all the world. Let's join together in the words of Ahava Rabbah on page 398.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu lemadeta, Otanu lemadeta. Aken Adonai Eloheinu v'shochlenu, U'menu nasiach lechukecha, V'nitzmach b'divrei Toratecha, U'mitzvotecha le'olam ha'ed. Kihen chayenu, ve'ored yameinu, U'bahem negei yomam v'layla, negei yomam v'layla. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir, Imenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael, Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל
ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורתם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בציר תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וריתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Doubting is but the forefront of faith. A faith in the infinite growth of the unbounded creation. A doubting age is one of restlessness and discontent with what is current. Doubt is an idea that is still alive. To doubt the past has uncovered all things is to express faith that many things are still to be uncovered. To doubt that we have grown to our full stature and knowledge is to express faith that we may develop into beings of such power and dignity that we cannot as yet imagine what that shall be. That's what this festival of Shavuot is about. Remembering our story, celebrating our past, but imagining our future. And so it is true that we try our best, at least to the best of our capacity, to join our voices together with those of Moses, of Miriam, and all who stood at the foot of the mountain, and find the words and the song that they found as they asked and declared, "Who is like you? Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai." Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael, blessed the Eternal One for redeeming Israel. Hashkivenu on the top of page 408.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, Hamidenu Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion. Hamideinu Malkeinu L'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashtivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Shalom. L'hamidenu Malkeinu
Turn forward to page 468. There is a page jump as we move to the Tefillah or the Amidah for our festive celebration. And we will be breaking slightly with our evening tradition here at TBI, which usually has us beginning together and then continuing silently, breaking only slightly long enough to allow us to add in the various festival observances which make this holiday so important. So let us begin with what is, as many of you know, my favorite kavanah. It's on the top of 469 as we rise. Let us pray as everything depends on God, but let us remember to act as everything depends on us.
Adonai Savatai Tifta, Ufi Tehilatecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VaNorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imachot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'Nehem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומרעיד הגשם, מזריח השמש ומרעיד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממות ומכער מצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים.
Amen. On the top of page 473, we're reminded that this is one of the three pilgrimage festivals, our seasonal changes. Your might, O God, renews the earth. With dewdrops of light and blessing, let the earth be illumined and blessed. With the joy of delight, let the earth rejoice and sing out. With the dew of life and well-being, let the earth be revived and improved. With the dew of redemption, let the earth be redeemed.
Livracha velo liklala, livracha velo liklala, livracha velo liklala.
For blessing and not for curse.
L'chaim velo lemavet, l'chaim velo lemavet, l'chaim velo lemavet.
For life and not death.
L'sova velo l'razon, l'sova velo l'razon, l'sova velo l'razon.
And for abundance and not want. For all these things we give thanks to God with the words of the Kedushah on the top of page 474.
אתה קדוש שמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך הסלע, Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
We remain standing as we transition into Kiddushat Hayom and are reminded on 473 that one does not travel to Jerusalem. One returns. One ascends the road taken by generations, the path of longing on the way to redemption. One brings rucksacks stuffed with memories to each mountain, to each hill. In the cobbled white alleyways, one offers a blessing for memories of the past which have been renewed. One does not travel to Jerusalem. One returns. We turn forward to page 484 as we offer the words of Ritzeh.
Say Adonai Eloheinu Be'amecha Yisrael U'tefilata Be'ahava
מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו מגן ישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. We acknowledge with thanks that you are the eternal our God and God of our ancestors forever, the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hands, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors every time of the day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one, whose mercies never end, O compassionate one, whose kindnesses never fail, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name forever be praised and blessed, O God, our Redeemer and our Helper. Let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha lachen adot, Blessed are you, Eternal One. Your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. And we do so now with the evening prayer of thanks. Shalom Rav on page 488. Please be seated.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech hador le'ol hashalom. Ki ata melech hador le'ol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. B'tov einecha nevarech et Amcha Yisrael. V'choletu v'chosha b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
To all these thoughts, all these prayers, all these hopes, all these aspirations, these memories rekindled, and these promises reminding, we simply and humbly ask that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable, be heard, and be understood by our Rock and our Redeemer.
Adonai Tzuri, Adonai
I'm going to leave it to Rabbi Ettlinger in a few moments' time to introduce our theme of study, our focus for tonight, this idea of chosenness. And I'm going to take the opportunity in advance of that, without preempting or taking anything away, to acknowledge the fact that when I stand on this bimmer, I have many unusual experiences. Sometimes challenging, more often than not beautiful and wonderful. Sometimes replicable, and sometimes I stand on this bimmer and do things, and as I do them I realize I'm probably never going to do them ever again. Tonight might be one of the latter, as I look out door number 3 and see Mount Sinai with a giant sign that says Mount Sinai, sitting in the middle of our courtyard. And it makes the educator in me want to ask a question. Questions are great. Questions define us as a people. They spark our conversation, our wonder, and our conversation. And I can assure you, before asking this question, I accept the fact that there are a multiplicity of answers. So you should feel comfortable and confident to respond. Because I promise, while your right might not be the same as the person's right to your left, or your right, you're probably still right. So why Mount Sinai? You're right. Why not? There are a number of midrashim, of stories, of anecdotes told about why Mount Sinai was chosen. Can anyone recall any of those from previous Yom Tovim, childhood memories, preschool classrooms, great theatrical productions? The mountain that could. Little mountain that could. Yes, I think they ripped that off with a train. The little mountain that could. The little mountain that could, perhaps best told in the junior primary school theatrical Shavuot assembly presentation, I think I've seen 1,000 times. When they dress up 3 children, not chosen because of their size or stature, but chosen entirely because of their size and stature. Why miss the opportunity to make a comedic point when you can make a comedic point? And on the one end, you have Mount Everest, claiming that the 10 Commandments should be delivered on Mount Everest because tallest, grandest, impressive, worthy of the kavod of such a fundamental teaching. And then you move to the second child, usually wearing a poncho, so they look like a mountain. Who's this child? What mountain do they represent? In this town, in this country? No. The one I've often seen teachers use, because it makes the point beautifully. Mount Beauty. Because in the name, there's a lovely message. Mount Beauty. Why Mount Beauty? It's beautiful. Not as pretty as our bimmer tonight, but Mount Beauty is beautiful. It has the beauty and the richness of our tradition. What more fitting a place could there be than Mount Beauty to receive the 10 Commandments? And then you get to Sinai. Sinai's usually speaking in a really small voice. Because Sinai's really not much more than a hill. A tiny little hill. And so far we've heard Everest speak in a loud, deep voice about Everest's claim to be the chosen mountain. And then we hear Mount Beauty speaking in a lovely, colourful voice about the beauty of our tradition and why that would be a fitting place. And then you get Sinai, who says, she's right, and he's right. I'm not worthy. I'm but a hill. My purpose is not known, and I'm certainly not going to be remembered. And so the Midrash goes, that is why the 10 Commandments were given on Mount Sinai. Because it's not about what the mountain was, or how the mountain was seen, but rather what the mountain offered. A place for people to gather around it, to become present, to find their presence, and to find their voice. That's one of the explanations given as to why Mount Sinai. The other one, which at different points in my life resonates with me as much, if not more, is a story about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, lifting up Mount Sinai. I don't always like the anthropomorphism of God, God lifting up a mountain. I don't really like an outstretched hand either, because I don't see it, feel it so much in the world in which I live. But God lifts up this mountain and holds it over the Jewish people and says, would you like the 10 Commandments? The rules, the obligations, the expectations that come with it? Yes, no question. Slipping. I do it with some jest on a night where I've eaten a lot, maybe way too much dairy than I should have already. But there are two midrashim, not told in the words or in the structure of our rabbis, but straight out of our sacred literature, giving two different perspectives. Was Torah given to us? Was it forced upon us? Did we embrace it? Yes, yes, and yes. My question for this evening, and our challenge as we move from Ma'ariv towards the night of learning, is will we continue to accept it? Will we continue to chase it? And will we continue to find meaning in it? Because that is the opportunity of this holiday. A final remark. I said in services last night that this holiday is different from all of the others. Because when our friends and our colleagues and our acquaintances ask us from the non-Jewish world, what's this festival about? More often than not, we answer that question for every festival in the same way. They tried to kill us. We survive. Let's eat. But Shavuot's different. They did not try and kill us. Not only did we not just survive, but we found ourselves. And we're still eating. So let's keep on that tradition. Let's not be morbid or morose. And let's remember that this is when we found ourselves. And let's enjoy it. Because this is the sweetest of all of our holidays. Let's turn to page 586 and close our service with the Aleinu prayers and Kaddish Yatom. Please rise, 586. I can open.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, ha'tekin alav yom celebration.
Shelo asanu k'gei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama. Shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kemo hamona. V'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malkei hamachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai, Melech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu, hayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad.
We remain standing for a few more moments as we turn our thoughts to those who are no longer with us, and we ready ourselves to offer the words of Kaddish Yatom, which can be found on page 598. At this point, I'll be reminding the congregation that we'll be reciting Yizkor tomorrow morning and recalling all of those that have passed since last we gathered for Yizkor. But on this Erev Yom Tov, we linger more paramountly, more focused this evening on those whose Shloshim we are still observing as a progressive community, as a congregation, and also as a nation. We think first of Rose Adler, Gloria Joseph, Bob Hawke, Eddie Kamisarov, Ray Nathan, Sol Schachter, Victor Searle, George Shaw, Dorothy Wexler, and Jack Wodak. And on Shavuot, we also think about those in our community who have been asked to be remembered on this festive occasion. We think of Hans Einhorn, Jacob Bando, Moshe Bayer, Judith Block, Gary Davey, Miriam Fain, Trudy Fox, Naomi Gross, Lionel Gross, Israel Kippen, Bernard Laurie, Lee Maisel, Orwell Michaelis, Miriam Nathan, Irene Popper, Gertrude Rose, Zissel Rosenfeld, Vilma Sackville, Elizabeth Shaw, Joseph Slonim, Maisi Weitz, Gunichi Yamamura, Jack Zucker, and the victims of the Farhud. We think of all of them, those named as well as those whose names lie deep within our hearts, as we offer the words of Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemir haba, ba'amat rach yiratei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayachon v'yomechon v'cheidechol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav izman kariv v'imru, Yehei shmei rabam v'rach le'olam, Yitbarach v'yishtabah v'yipa'ah v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, Yitada v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei d'kodisha, Le'elam minkol brichata v'shirata, Tushbachata v'nechemata, Damiran v'ama, Yehei shlama rabban v'shma, Israel v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who causes harmony to reign in the heavens above bring peace to all of us, to all humanity, but particularly to all who mourn. And to that we say, Amen. Please be seated. We're not going to be inviting our president up to make some announcements because the night is still young, even though, as I've said at each point in this evening, at each time we transition, there's an opportunity for people to transition in and transition out. And we know that we've already had a number of groups come through and move on from us. But we want to close our service with a song, as is appropriate. I have no idea what that song is, though.
Ein Adir.
Of course I have no idea. Of course it's Ein Adir. Ein Adir, it can be found on page 632.
Ein Adir Adonai, Ein Baruch, Ein Aram, Ein Gadol Torah, Ein Josnecha Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, Yivorech Kol Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, Yivorech Kol Yisrael, Ein Haduk Adonai, Ve'ein Ratik Ben Amiram, Ein Zakah KaTorah, Ve'ein Chilka Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, Yivorech Kol Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, Yivorech Kol Yisrael, Ein Kavod Adonai, Ve'ein Yachiv Ben Amiram, Ein Kabira KaTorah, Ve'ein Ramkai Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, Yivorech Kol Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, Yivorech Kol Yisrael, Ein Bodek Adonai, Ve'ein Tzadik Ben Amiram, Ein Kosha KaTorah, Ve'ein Tomecha Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, El Yorecha Yisrael, Mipiel, Mipiel, El Yorecha Yisrael.
Shakar.
Chag Sameach, everybody. I almost said Shabbat Shalom. So what we will do is, just so some of you can stretch your legs, why don't we very, very quickly get a cup of tea or cup of coffee or something to drink in the right-hand corner, and then I'll invite you to come back as quickly as possible and have a seat. If you'd like to get rid of your sidorim,
you can return them to the trolleys.
That too. We can return them. You can either just leave them on a seat near you or place them to the trolley at the back of the sanctuary. But let's just, the time now is 7:13. Let's come back in about 3 minutes.
We will be staying in the sanctuary, unlike previous years, to allow people who are joining us remotely to be able to stay with us through the Tikkun Leil Shavuot. There's no hurt in nothing. There's no hurt in having it.
Maybe during one of the breaks. Yeah, good idea. Good idea. Thank you.
2, 3. Two. Three, 4.
Friends, if you'd like to come back and gather. Friends, please come on over and let's gather so we can begin our program. Chag Sameach, everyone. So I just want to share with you as we begin, why chosenness? How did this topic come to be? And it really came out of various discussions and conversations out of our adult education committee that gathers almost once a month and brings forward our Lunch and Learn program, brings forward Shavuot, and various panels that we might have throughout the year. And I would say probably for the last 2 or 3 years, the idea of chosenness, what does it mean to be part of the chosen people, continuously comes to the forefront of our conversations. Because I think it's a question that many of us at times could feel extremely comfortable with, and at times extremely uncomfortable. And so the question that we're going to try to answer tonight is not only what is chosenness, how is it relevant to us today, but also have a look at the diversity of concepts of chosenness within our Jewish community presently. And I would say it's probably not presently, it probably has been through the ages. So if I'm to ask you a question, think of Torah for a moment. While you think of Torah, let me tell you how the night will work. So we're going to have, I'm just opening, and then Tammy's going to take over. Then there'll be cheesecake. We have more cheesecakes. They're in the fridge. It's not just the one cheesecake. People asked to have them in the fridge. Then after that, we'll hear from selected voices from our congregation, members of our community at large, who will share between 3 to 5 minutes on the concept of chosenness. Then we'll break for more cheesecake. Hopefully there'll be a lot left over for us to have second tastings. And then we will hear from our scholars, Sidra Mashinsky, Bernard Kolbman, who's over there. You can wave to everybody, Bernard. And Rabbi Gersh Lazaro, who will talk a little bit more extensively about chosenness from various perspectives. But getting back to Torah. Where in Torah does it say we are the chosen people? It doesn't. So what does it say in Torah? And how do we get to the idea of chosenness? Peter?
Isn't it the covenant with Abraham?
It's covenant. That's exactly part of it. That's part of it, is that God says, I will make a covenant with you. But there are other things, and of course the symbol of the covenant is? Sorry, I like to use action things. Gersh does that, I do that. Brit Milah is the ultimate sign of the covenant. Is that God choosing to do the Brit Milah with us? Who knows? I think that's open to interpretation. There's another text that I want to share with you. And for me, this is possibly one of the most beautiful. It talks about, the text says, this is from Deuteronomy, for you are a people consecrated to the eternal your God of all the peoples of the earth. The eternal God, and it does have the word chosen. The eternal your God chose you, but chose you for what? To be an amsegula, to be a treasured people. But what does it mean to be treasured? And what does it mean to be a treasured people? And we'll hopefully come to that. But to the best text, and we're not handing these texts out because I just want to put that taste on your tongues, to give you a time, is in Deuteronomy, where it says, and when the eternal your God has thrust them from your path, say not to yourselves, the eternal has enabled us to possess this land because of our virtues. It is rather because of the wickedness of those nations that the eternal is possessing them before you. So why does God do these things for us? Not because we're so special, but because the other people are wicked. In a sense, and that's a really fascinating concept, because some of our texts say it's not because we're so good, we're so virtuous, we're keeping all the commandments, we're keeping all the mitzvot, but we are the lesser of the evil that's out in the community, which is a shift and it's a change in the way that we think about what does it mean to be chosen. Okay, so you've got 3 children. You like the one that's less naughty the most. Right? Does it work that way? Obviously it doesn't within families. I hope it doesn't. So chosenness is complicated. It's been with us for generations and centuries. It's written prolifically in our texts. And I'm not sure that anybody actually agrees about what chosenness means. I'm going to hand over to Tammy, who's going to teach the rest of this session. Does everybody know Tammy Cohen? So Tammy Cohen, member of this congregation and studying not-for-profit management and education at Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles. Welcome home, Tammy. I know you're leaving very soon. So Tammy.
Thank you. As Rabbi Kim said, the Torah presents multiple perspectives of what being chosen is, or what responsibility, whether it's a legacy, something that we've merited, or something that was just given to us. And so we can see just in the Torah itself a diverse range of opinions. So too in our texts from rabbis and responses to the Torah do we also see many different perspectives, and we're going to explore some of them in the next part of this session. In our liturgy, we have 2 examples that talk about chosenness. One is the Aleinu prayer, and the other is the Torah blessings. Because it's Shavuot and we're celebrating receiving the Torah, we're going to focus on the Torah blessings for the next few minutes. Every time we in our services, take the Torah out of the ark, we reenact Sinai's revelation, just as tonight as we enter into Shavuot, we are reliving and reenacting Sinai. So when the service leaders come up to the ark and they take the Torah out of the ark, it is as though they are coming up to Mount Sinai. And then we share Torah with the whole community, taking the procession around the community, so that every single person in the community can have a taste, a touch maybe with a tzitzit or a siddur, a prayer book, and experience and take in Torah. So I found it very interesting to think about the Torah blessings. What do we say when we then come up to the Torah, and who can come up to the Torah? There are two parts to the blessing. The first that Rabbi Gersh alluded to earlier, about being ready, about being present, about being called to prayer. We say, Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach, the same words that we used earlier in our service when we move from the opening section of our prayers into the Shema and that part of the service. So we're asking, are we ready? Are we present every single time that we call someone up to Torah? The second part of the prayer has the words, Asher bachabanu mikol ha'amim, that we were chosen by God from all the other people. So every single time we call someone to Torah, we are claiming that chosenness. But the question comes back to, as Rabbi Kim said, is this a responsibility? Is it the fact that we were the lesser bad option, that we were chosen? Or is it a reminder of our responsibility? As we continue to explore the text, these are some of the questions that we can hold on to with us. Early on in Torah reading, in the history of the Jewish people, the Torah blessings were only said at the very beginning of the first Aliyah, and then the blessing after was said at the very end, after the very last Aliyah. And I learned recently that in the Talmudic period, the ritual was adapted so that for every single Aliyah, as we continue to do today, we say the blessing before and after each Aliyah. The Torah reading has always been used at a gathering point. When is the community together? Many years ago, it was in the marketplace when the people were gathering, so they could hear the words of Torah as they were going about their daily lives and their work. And then today, when we gather here in the synagogue or in other communities, we say these same blessings. But in the Talmudic period, I wonder if this question of responsibility or merit or legacy or claiming this chosenness also impacted their decision to make the blessings before every single Aliyah, rather than just before the very first and the very last of the Aliyot. So there's a question from these blessings, that every time we are called to Torah, we can think about what the chosenness means to us. I hope that as we continue to explore this evening and you hear from community members and from our scholars, that maybe you'll think about this concept more grounded with the Jewish perspective and the text in your belief that you had before you walked in this evening, or maybe this will help open your thoughts to something new. We have some texts from modern perspectives, having heard some of the Torah perspectives and the rabbinic responses from the Talmudic period and how it falls into our liturgy. We're now going to look at some modern concepts of chosenness. In a moment, I'm going to hand out these text studies. I'm going to invite you to turn to the people nearby, maybe in small groups of 3 or 4. There are 2 texts, one from Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan and one from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. And at the end of each of these readings, there are some questions to think about this topic of chosenness that these rabbis have been responding to. So we're going to take a few minutes in some small groups, 4 or 5 people with the people around you. This half of the room we're going to take the first text, and this half of the room we're going to take the second text. And then after you've had a few minutes to read, digest them, a couple of them are long, but the questions will help guide your thoughts. So I suggest reading the questions beforehand, and then reading through the text, and then we'll come together and share some of our thoughts on this. Any questions at this point? There are pages coming around. Wonderful.
Just to clarify, the group to my left, so on this side, you're doing text number 1, and the group on that side are doing text number 2. So take a moment to read it, and then around you where there are people, feel free to talk about the questions.
We're going to take 2 or 3 more minutes in the small groups. When we come together, we're going to have a couple of people from each side explain the reading for the other side of the room who hasn't read it, and then share something interesting that they've discussed together. So just be prepared to share, maybe one person from your group to share something. It's so wonderful to hear so much conversation on these questions and these topics. I'm going to do a plug for Melton on behalf of TBI, that this method of taking a text and asking questions and working in small groups and discussing and debating is the way that the Melton program is structured. So if you've enjoyed this little bit of time that you've had with these texts and with community, then I encourage you to find a course with Melton and sign up and continue studying and learning together. We're going to join together and we're going to start with text 1. As I mentioned, I'm going to ask anyone who's interested to share firstly a brief summary of what this reading is for the other side of the room who hasn't read it yet, and then something that came out of the questions that have been asked. It might be useful to take a moment to read the questions at the bottom of the other side that you didn't read, just so you can hear what was the prompt to the questions and the responses that we're going to hear. So I'll give everyone a moment to read those questions, and then I will take a volunteer from this side of the room. All right, who from text 1 would like to begin a brief summary of the reading and then something interesting that came out of their conversations. Someone want to summarize it? Get us going? Bit of summary.
Don't make Tammy suffer, people.
Make her suffer, I'm enjoying it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rabbi Kaplan says that...
Do you want to use the microphone, Deborah?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So Rabbi Kaplan says that he thinks that the idea of us as a chosen people is no longer relevant in our modern world, and basically that it's nationalism and has no place anymore, that it can lead to anti-Semitism, that what happened with the giving of the Torah is gone past and no longer part of what we do, and that we should be looking at things more objectively. He says the function is to inspire and direct the energies of a people and to think about our destinies and how to make the best use of our lives. So he's very pragmatic. Okay, good enough.
Someone else want to share something that came out?
In my view, he takes a very narrow and negative approach to the idea of chosenness, saying it's us and them, and sort of a degree of, I was going to say, evil or mendacity to the idea. He's saying it's, old thoughts. He talks about us and them almost, and he's particularly critical of what he thinks are supernatural events, and that lead to the conclusion that Israel is elected and chosen as well. And I just find it there's no pluralistic sort of post-modern approach in this. That's all I'm going to say. I don't agree. I do think that I think it leads to tensions, but I think it's hard to put it in contemporary context on the argument that he's using. He kind of draws you along to agree with him, if that makes sense. So to me that's a problematic form of argument, but I have no solution or alternative, just a more pluralistic.
Isn't it the Christian view of Judaism? This is a question. I just thought of it off the top of my head, so it's probably rubbish, but it's one of the reasons that Trump was elected president. It's the Christian right that believes we are the chosen people and is very strong on Israel, which is actually outside our... something we can't change, I don't think. If other people think we're chosen, what can we do? But if we could get rid of being chosen, I don't think it'll make any difference to anti-Semitism, because we murdered Christ, and that won't be forgotten. Not for a long time. That's how I see it. Sorry?
Tammy, I'll help with them. Does anybody want to respond to Larry?
Except for 2,000 years.
Yes. I didn't make it as far as his son through law school, but I will say that we might need to double that with allegedly. Because I wasn't quite there, and I don't necessarily accept that narrative. And I think the Romans murdered plenty of us, but I think you're referring to the historical understanding of what happened, and 2,000 years of memory doesn't necessarily make fact relevant anymore.
Doesn't make it relevant.
Well, whether we did or didn't murder Christ, 2,000 years of teaching.
But I think what Larry's referring to is the perception.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the perception of people of communities, the non-Jewish community over years, is that whether we did it or not, and we didn't, actually the Romans did, until 60 years ago, it was official that we killed Christ. So it's the perception of the community over hundreds, thousands, close to 2,000 years. You heard it, you had your...
Yeah, I was just going to take it to a very different place. So what came out when we were talking about it is, I suppose I did go along with what Kaplan was saying. I thought that was, I actually agreed with that. There was an agreement in our group about that. And so I thought, well, we could look at chosen in a different way. We could say that we could be a people that choose, that make choices that are more responsible, choices that are more appropriate, and it is in the Bible where it says that, we are supposed to look after the earth. We're supposed to, Garden of Eden, for instance, we're supposed to make sure that the earth is looked after. So we, I believe, could be the people that say we are choosing to not just heal the earth, but no more hurt it, so we can make those choices.
Great, thank you.
Other people do that as well?
They can join in choosing to act responsibly as well. I'm just saying we can.
Not uniquely Jewish.
No, it's not.
No, but what is unique, if I can respond to Larry and to Yehuda, what is uniquely Jewish is that we feel, in order to do these things, for example, tikkun olam, for us it's a mitzvah, it's a religious obligation. And where does that obligation come from? Of course, it's our relationship, our covenant with God. So it's in the sense we don't actually choose. We see it as our religious obligation to do this, whereas other religions don't necessarily do that. I think Bernard Corbin wants to share a word.
It's only in terms of looking after the earth and so on. The original text does not say that we look after the earth. It says we have dominion over the earth. That was changed, in fact, by a Catholic by the name of Hans Kuhn, who brought up 1973 all the religious leaders from all over the world, including shamans and others from small religion, and started the World Parliament of Religion. And he is the one who changed from the whole idea of subjugation and dominion to us looking after. And then Jews, Christians and others followed suit.
Thank you. So Kaplan's argument is that this election of the people of Israel as being superior and chosen and placing themselves above all the other nations should be removed from the language that we use to talk about Jewish life today. Going back to the Torah text that Rabbi Kim brought up and the Torah blessings that we spoke about earlier, it raises the question for each of us about whether we take this idea, this election, as a responsibility, as merit, something that we've earned, or whether we use it and taking on these values from Torah that this group has brought up. What do we see as our responsibility, and how can we use that in the work that we do in community and in our lives? We're going to move on to the second group, the second text. So if someone would like to kick it off and give a bit of a summary and explanation of what the text was, and then something that came up from your conversations.
Thank you. So we went back and forth a few times on what this text was really about, trying to unpack it. We had a few critiques of it as well. Closer? There we go. Can everyone hear me? Yes, of course you can. So we went back and forth a few times on what this text was about, and we had a few critiques of it, but first, sort of to recap what it's about. It's by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and sort of is probably a bit of a counterpoint to the previous text, where he's talking about chosenness in a much more positive light. He refers to it sort of as a critique of empire, it's a critique of imperialism and, large-scale groupthink, and more of a notion of a relationship, personal relationship with God, that God choosing us, choosing Israel as a people, choosing anyone is at a personal level. And then he tries to grapple with the notion of chosenness as exclusivity, where he acknowledges that God chose Abel and not Cain, and Abraham and not a nation, Isaac and not Ishmael, and Jacob and not Esau, and the slaves of Israel rather than Egypt, the masters, and tries to reconcile that with the idea that you can be chosen, or one can be chosen above another or instead of another, without it necessarily being over in terms of superiority or moral judgment. And when we were sitting here talking about that, we really felt that Sachs was trying to have his cheesecake and eat it too. It doesn't flow logically for us that you can. It goes back to the analogy that Rabbi Kim used earlier about your preferred child being the least naughty one. You can't say that you love all of your children equally, but my gosh, my least naughty child is my favourite, because those two statements don't really gel well together. But, yeah.
I'm both comfortable and uncomfortable with the chosen concept. What I was saying to the individuals here, it specifies in Deuteronomy in 14.2 that the Jewish people are chosen. What tends to happen in the modern world is that people take the word chosen out of context and it very quickly becomes an anti-Semitic remark. You're better than me and I'm worse. And in the Torah study that I've done, it's been very clearly explained to me, and when it's asked of me on several occasions, and I think Sachs goes a long way to explain that, is that as a chosen people, according to the Torah, it's God's will that we actually become a light unto the nations, the same as we appoint a teacher to teach children the way in which things occur in a classroom, the way in which we have a rabbi to teach us the way of life in Jewish study, etc., etc. There's an obligation on all of us to be a light unto the nations, and that can be defined in many ways: the way in which we behave, the way in which we communicate, the way in which we teach, etc., etc. And Sachs has done a very good job in that explanation, because he's saying, I'm not only loving the ones who love me, but I'm out to love all of those who aren't loved, which is saying it doesn't necessarily mean only to the Jewish people, it means to everybody. And I think that's where I feel comfortable with his text.
His text really encompasses the idea of B'Tselem Elohim, that we are all made in God's image, even with all of the differences that we each have as well.
Thank you. As I read this, there's different layers, different relationships. The central concept is that we're all made in the image of God and God loves everybody. So in that sense, chosenness can't mean I choose you over the other. And for me, as I understand it, the central notion here is that God cherishes diversity rather than unity, individual rather than nations. And the central concept for him and in his writings is the dignity of difference. And so at the end of this passage, the special relationship with Israel is that Israel embodies difference. So in that final sentence, to exemplify this truth, he chooses Israel, the people who are called on to be different, to show that for God difference matters. So chosenness in that sense is an affirmation of the dignity of humanity, and central to that is our diversity. And Israel exemplifies that diversity vis-a-vis other nations.
Anyone else?
It just strikes me that with chosenness comes a lot of responsibility, and it's a heavy burden. And Tevye famously said to God, "Next time, can you please choose someone else?" And I think in a modern pluralistic world, it can sit awkwardly to say we are the chosen people, and we don't often honestly say that about ourselves. But it has become a trope of anti-Semitism, and has been for a long time, that that we are somehow different and better, and we're going to teach everybody how to live. And that's how it's seen in a negative way. I think we have given the world the 5 books, and we're the Abrahamic religion that's sort of the oldest religion of the 3 monotheistic faiths. And in that sense, we have been chosen to teach. But it's a complex concept, I think, in today's world where we try to be pluralistic.
Thank you. So we can hear from, just within our community here, how many different approaches we can take to these concepts coming from Torah, from our liturgy, and from these modern interpretations and responses to this concept of chosenness. We're going to pause there. I hope that these questions and thoughts will continue to stay with you as through the next section we hear some other personal stories of chosenness. Before that,
so the cheesecakes are now out. This is so please feel free to, we're just putting out some last minute numbers next to the cheesecake, but please feel free again to help yourself to some more tea or coffee and to sample the cheesecakes. It is now 8:02. Let's come back in 10 minutes. Can you do that?
We can. I just need to reiterate the comment that I made previously. As many people know, I have the ability, the strength, with great disappointment, to make this hour of day last year. I'm so glad to be with now. But I did hear very soon after Shavuot that there was great disappointment that some of the people that voted included Herman Sanger 11 times. Last year. So rather than giving the people the opportunity to write a name there, we've gone for a new technique. Each of you, and we are still relying on trust, have the ability to not only taste as much cheesecake as you would like, but to vote for a cheesecake 1 time, a cheesecake, 3 different cheesecakes 1 time, or 1 cheesecake 3 times. In other words, you're allowed 3 of these. If you could place the one you like into the cup next to, that way we might actually know who really won the Great Cheesecake Competition of 2019, not just who brought the most friends. I wish you all a Chag Sameach.
Please let's try to keep it to 10 minutes, friends. Well done, Tammy.
Get their own prizes. Winners' medals. You don't have to take them all now, you're welcome to. The glasses next to the cakes are for the tokens. Yes, and that's 4 you took. Okay. Honesty system. Yes, you can. Who would think people cheating the cheese? You want some cheesecaking competition? How are you? How are you keeping? words. Do you want me to get you a letter? Yeah.
Friends, you got 3 more minutes. You can take your cheesecake to your seats.
Just for all those people currently still watching us on TBI TV, Peter and I are just making the ark look like it should back at Sinai. Your son is currently getting a text from your daughter, editing this. He's going to put it on recycle, rerun. These are the thing. It looks great. It's just like it did when we stood at Sinai last time.
Friends, please come on forward. We really do want to try to keep to time as much as possible. If I could please have Beth, Ella, Neil, Glenda, Ezra and Sephi to please come on forward. Please come on forward, everybody. I know it's really tough to pull away from the cheesecake. It's really hard. And I know some of you only came for the cheesecake and are tolerating the rest of the program for the cheesecake. Glenda? Do we have a Glenda in the house? Where's Peter Cohen? Peter Cohen? It's already fallen down. You did a lousy job. So the next part of our program is going to have a slightly different focus. Our adult education group felt that it would be very interesting, and we all were unanimous in this decision, in these thoughts, to have members of the congregation share with us their idea of what it means to be chosen. I've tried to work towards getting various demographics, age demographics, gender demographics, you name a demographic, to share their views on chosenness. I specifically wasn't prescriptive and I sent an email or made a phone call, said, hey, we're having this panel, would you like to share with us what it means to be chosen or part of the chosen people? And I didn't give a lot of guidance, except to say, let's keep each presentation between 3 and 5 minutes. No, it cannot be 6 minutes, Beth. 3 and 5 minutes. And so for our very first presentation, we're going to hear from Neil Cowan. So Neil just became a grandfather. And Rosemary became a grandmother. So to a beautiful grandson. So Neil, thank you for being here, given everything that has been happening. Here's the microphone.
I will use the beam. Oh, then I've got my hands are free.
Then you don't need that.
Okay. I typed out exactly what I was asked to talk about, which is what it means for me to be part of the Jewish people. And I did this Thursday because there was a small possibility that Thursday night that the grandchild would arrive, and it did, so I was lucky on that. My personal story is about choice, identity, and learning. My father was Jewish, attending St Kilda Shul, but only occasionally post bar mitzvah, common story. My mother was Christian from Newcastle, and I grew up in Newcastle. Thus, as a child, I had a choice to make, based on limited information, which is not dissimilar to the Shavuot situation of accepting Torah. Luckily for me, my father instilled in me the importance of study and books. And he had grown up in a strong Jewish household, so obviously he had some knowledge to pass on. He was proud of his Jewish heritage, even if his religious practice was non-existent. He was proud of his culture and his value set. And he passed those three things on to me as what it meant to be part of the Jewish people, i.e. heritage, culture, strong values. High school was a breakthrough, as there was one other Jew in my entire grade 7. I'll show you. That other Jew rapidly became my best friend. My identity was Jewish, and I wanted to be part of the broader community. Through my friend, I was able to attend the one Orthodox synagogue in Newcastle, which hadn't had a rabbi for many decades. It hasn't had a rabbi since. Through his father, I learned about the struggle to achieve a minyan for Shabbat. Through his mother, I learned about the Pesach Seder, to which I was invited every year. I learned that being part of the Jewish people meant participation in festivals and Shabbat. Through osmosis, I realised that the sense of well-being that comes from participation in the annual cycle of festivals, on Yom Kippur, often meeting the same people at the same time of year in the same place, resting in front of the same fountain every year, knowing that I was part of something much bigger and much older than myself, was somehow reassuring. Being part of the Jewish people meant that I was committed to providing my children with a Jewish education and a Jewish home, even before I'd even met my beautiful wife-to-be, Rosemary. Being part of the Jewish community meant for me that I had obligations and responsibilities. Significant for me was that in 1984, with the birth of my twin sons and moving to the United States, I discovered progressive Judaism. That community welcomed us and gave us emotional support, simply because we were part of it. Thus, I'm part of a diverse Jewish people. Being part of the Jewish community in the 1990s, I had no problem responding to the overtures of Chabad, to learn more for my children, to attend Hashi, and to enable them to mix with Jewish kids. Being part of the Jewish people for me is not narrow or defined by religious belief. Walking up Hotham Street on a Saturday morning as we come to shul, other Jews, often ultra-Orthodox, wish me good Shabbos. It feels positive to be acknowledged by strangers as part of the Jewish community. It enhances my enjoyment of Shabbat, as does Oneg Shabbat here at TBI. So, earlier I said my personal story was about choice, identity and learning. The more I was able to engage, the more I learnt. And the more I understood, the more I was able to commit and practice and strengthen the community. It has proved to be a positive feedback loop. Like most people, I love my family, and that love is unconditional. The Jewish community is like my family. I support it, and it supports me. This relationship is not transactional or necessarily balanced. It does not need to be. As I move through the cycle of life, I'm able to support the community in different ways as my skills and circumstances change. By welcoming me and encouraging my participation, the Jewish community strengthens the resilience of myself and my family to deal with the vicissitudes of life. So in conclusion, what it means to me to be part of the Jewish people, it is my identity, it's my tribe. It is my heritage, much bigger than myself. It is the foundation of my core values. It is a source of well-being and pride. It is a safety net that encourages resilience. It is an undeniable, non-delegatable obligation to support and nurture my people. It is a reminder that oppression persists and must be resisted. It is an expectation of welcome for no other reason than I am part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Light.
When Kim asked me to speak about chosenness, I thought of two particular issues. Firstly, my husband Larry and I, travelled to Israel in last October, where we saw and experienced many things. And one highlight was when Larry he rode on the Israel bike ride from Jerusalem to Eilat. The reason I mention this is that we and other riders performed Havdalah on the rim of Mitzpeh Ramon crater, and I left this ritual feeling blessed that I was Jewish. I loved the sense of community that the ritual brought out, and I loved the ritual itself, and I loved being Jewish. And that being Jewish is a blessing. It enriches our life, adds a sense of drama through the yearly cycle of festivals and Shabbat, when we stop and enjoy our family, which is special. Thank you. That said, when I was asked about being one of the chosen people, I thought immediately about an exhibition that we produced at the Jewish Museum regarding the wandering Jew and being a member of a minority in the diaspora, and how Jews have always been members of a marginal group. I thought of the saying of the Polish sociologist Alexander Hertz, that marginals are the fermenting agent, the yeast without which culture would not develop. I was thinking how Jews have always been the conscience of mankind, the light unto the nations. I was thinking that was why Israel is judged most harshly, the expectation that we are more moral than others, more upright, more ethical. In the Bible, the Jews are identified as the chosen people. If we keep our bargain with God, our covenant, if we believe in the one jealous God and we do not worship idols, nobody does that much these days. What does it mean that we're the chosen people today? Perhaps it's better to think of Jews as unique rather than chosen. In Israel, Jews are the majority. However, we are the minority in the world today, as in the past. Are we expected to be more moral and ethical than other people? Should we accept the epidemiologists who surmise that we're more intelligent than other people? Or should we avoid generalisations and stereotypes and think of those Jewish British convicts who arrived here in the 1770s, who thrived because they could read and write, so were able to apply their learning to practically surviving in a new country in Australia? I think we're chosen because first it should be kept in mind that Judaism has survived according to our Bible for 5,779 years. We have survived all the people who have sought to destroy us. It is a joy being Jewish to fulfil the ritual practices that come with an adherence to being Jewish. It means we belong to a community, a peoplehood. I don't know another life, but I feel I'm blessed to have been born Jewish.
Thank you. Beth Roden.
I want to share my story of choosing Judaism. Yes, I want to share my story of choosing Judaism and being a chosen, my thoughts on chosenness. So I met my husband Daniel, he's somewhere, there he is, 5 years ago on his 29th birthday. We went on our first date 3 days later, where we spoke about how different our upbringings were. I grew up in a small country town in New South Wales, if you can hear by my voice. Daniel always lived in the big city of Sydney. I came from a very musical and creative family, while his family were very strong in the business and corporate world. While Daniel went to shul on high holidays, I attended Catholic church every Sunday, every week, since the day I was born. On paper, we couldn't be any more different. But at our core, we shared the same values and beliefs about the world. We had the same dreams for the future, and that was what was important to me. Within the first hour of us talking, Daniel sat across from me and said, I just want to flag something with you. It may seem a little early to say this, but if this goes somewhere, I'm going to need you to convert to Judaism. I remember just sitting there going, what is this guy on about? We've only just met. But at the same time, I was running through all these scenarios in my mind and seeing how I felt about the idea. I told him, look, I'm not exactly opposed to it, and we didn't really speak about it again for another 6 months. Subconsciously, in that moment though, I know I chose him. 6 months later, Daniel was showing me some of his possessions that he inherited from his grandparents. He was telling me stories of their survival and stories of their ultimate strength. He showed me the talit from both his grandfathers, the tefillin that he used at school every day. We sat for hours while he explained why it was important to him for his children to carry on these traditions his grandparents fought so hard to keep. He wasn't explaining why it was important to his parents or why it would have been important to his grandparents. He was explaining precisely why it was important to him that these traditions be carried on. And consciously, in that moment, I chose him. I'll never forget my first Friday night service when I went to Emmanuel Synagogue in Sydney. It will forever be one of the most spiritually moving moments of my life. I led music with my family in the Catholic Church since I was maybe 5 years old, so gentle and meditative music was always how I prayed. and growing up in that spiritual environment transformed my faith in ways I can't explain. So I felt right at home in that Masorti service. Through my conversion, I took extra classes with Cantor Ken Cohen because I connected with the music so much. So while Daniel introduced me to Judaism, it was the Masorti liturgy, the psalms, and the melodies that made me choose to be Jewish. It took me 15 months to complete my conversion with the guidance of Rabbi Jeffrey Kamens. He helped me navigate the struggle that I had, thinking that losing Catholicism meant that I was losing my family. But I couldn't have been more wrong. My family were extremely supportive and came to everything, including one night at Sukkot, where I sang a melody of Ahavat Olam that I wrote myself for the first time. My sister told me how proud she was of me, and my mum and dad told me that they could recognise the way we write Baruch Atah Adonai in Hebrew after following along with Daniel all evening. Some of Daniel's family, however, wouldn't attend and were openly struggling with the fact that I didn't convert Orthodox. It was only just a few weeks ago, this year, that I heard my father-in-law say that he's now accepting of us going to a progressive shul. It's in moments like this that I keep reminding myself why I chose Judaism. At the end of 2016, I went to Israel on birthright, which is a funny thing to do when I wasn't born Jewish, but it was the first time since choosing Judaism that I was able to have an independent experience and discover what spoke to me and how I could further connect with my Judaism. I remember walking around getting lost in Tzvat, finding an old Ashkenazi synagogue, and learning that I was in the town where Lahadodi originated. I started thinking about all the melodies I wanted to create and share for the Jewish liturgy, and thinking what a privilege and an important moment it was for me to be there. I remember climbing Masada at 4 a.m. via the brutal snake path and bursting into tears of pride at the top, having my bat mitzvah there and sharing my story of choosing Judaism. I remember choosing to wear the tichel, which is this thing on my head, on Shabbat, not as a symbol of my marriage, but as a symbol of my individual connection to Judaism. It became something that I would call my own, a physical way to separate my week and feel a physical connection to my beliefs. I remember being at the Kotel and feeling the weight and responsibilities of those choices. I don't believe that any choice I've made in my life makes me a chosen person, because frankly, and this might be a controversial opinion, I don't believe in chosen people. Regardless of being Jewish or growing up Catholic, whatever faith you may be, I believe every person in this world is born with the responsibility of being a good person, given the responsibility to act justly and live by example. Not everyone chooses to do so. Even in our community, not everyone chooses to do so. And that's where the difference lies between each individual person. Chosenness to me is not a birthright. It's not about lineage, and it's not anything we're entitled to without any effort. Chosenness is mutual. It comes from making an initial choice yourself, choosing your beliefs and owning them, living by them and carrying the burden of them. I choose Judaism and living my life by how I personally connect within it. And I implore everyone here tonight to think about what it is that you connect with and how that makes you choose your Judaism. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to invite up the Netzer Shaliach, Sefi Shalom, to share with us.
Hi. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sefi. I'm the Shaliach. Shaliach is Israel emissary. I guess you won't guess by my accent where I came from. So the topic we were asked to speak about tonight is what does it mean for me to be a part of the chosen people, which assumes into the question the fact that Jewish people are the chosen people. There was quite a few discussions about it, but we'll accept the call of the person who made the agenda for tonight, and I'll speak about what does it mean to be a part of the chosen people. And whenever you are chosen for any task in life, you immediately get, by default, a lot of responsibility and a lot of power. The power that I got with being chosen to be a Netzer Shaliach is obvious. I can influence the movement. when you are chosen to be a parking inspector or whatever it's called in English, you get a lot of power in your hands immediately. And as the old saying goes, with big power comes big responsibility. And the responsibility that was mentioned a lot earlier is what I want to focus on. And Shavuot is all about celebrating the 10 Commandments and the Torah. And what happened in Mount Sinai? God came to the Hebrews and told them, okay, I've just chosen you to be the most important people in the world. Here is a list of your responsibilities. And here are 10 things that that you are not allowed to do, and everyone else can do it if they want. But you are not allowed to do it. Why? Because you will be the most powerful. You have a lot of responsibility in your hands. And as humans, usually humans tend to forget about the way they're supposed to walk, the path they're supposed to walk here and there. And we Jews made a lot of made a lot of sins along the way. And on my opinion, the biggest sin you can do if you have a lot of power is to be arrogant about it and to abuse it. And I think that Jewish people were arrogant both in Israel and in the diaspora in many points in time. And there is a classic Israeli comedy piece by Lul, if you by any chance know them. It's a group that was led by Arik Einstein and Uri Zohar. And they had a very, very funny piece where Arik Einstein and Uri Zohar stand in the Tel Aviv port, and each time they are dressed up as different people. And in the first scene, they're dressed up as Arabs, and they look at the Russian Olim who came to Israel in the late 19th century, and they say, look at them, they think that they know everything, they came here, you don't know anything, go back to your country. And then the Russians, in the next scene, they're dressed up as the Russians. And they look at the Polish Olim that came 20 years later, look at them, they think they know anything, we know much better, go back home, you don't belong here. And then the Polish Olim in the next scene look at the German Jews and say, oh, you don't know anything, we know everything. And so it goes. And that's always the case in Israel. Each group of Olim think that they know everything, and the one who came after them don't know anything, and it's still our land. And I think this is not the way to do it, not the way to treat immigrants, not the way to treat people who are living amongst us, who are not part of the majority. And if we look at what we're reading in Shavuot, Megillat Ruth, the book of Ruth, and look at the story, then Ruth, she was a Moaviah. She was from Moab, which is clearly people that were not allowed to marry. It's very clearly written in the Bible. Yet she got married to a Jewish person, and then when he died, she came to his mother, to Naomi, and she told her, Ba'asher telchi elech, wherever you shall go, I shall go. Your people is my people, your God is my God. And she was accepted. And I don't know if the Rabbanut, if the rabbinical courts in Israel, the Orthodox ones, would approve that as a conversion. Today it's a bit harder to convert, but if those were the rules today, back then, we would have missed on King David and King Solomon, who were great-grandchildren. So maybe we should think, who are we missing along the way? And it's not always the case. There are some amazing initiatives and amazing people. Most of the people do act responsibly and do the tikkun olam that we are supposed to do. So here in TBI, there are the beautiful initiatives that are not only directed towards Jews, but towards anyone who is in need in the society, whether it's homeless people or refugees or anyone else. And in Israel, there are thousands of civil society charities that help people from Olim Chadashim, from new immigrants, to refugees, to different minorities. And I think that we need to remember that as we are the light to the other nations, and we should look at those initiatives as our light, as what we need to follow and what we need to do in order to carry out our responsibility as the chosen people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steffi. Glenda Jones. After Glenda, we have two more speakers. I'll invite up Ella Sandler and Robert Desmond. Ezra.
Kim, you gave me a real task, because when I read that email, my first thought was, how on earth can you answer in 3 to 5 minutes? I need 3 to 5 hours. But I have cut it down, and so there's so many reasons why it's wonderful to be part of this amazing group that we call Jews. And I think that the way that I can describe it best for me is to go through the process I went through when I got that email, because my first reaction was, I can't do that. I want to say no, I can't, no, please. No way am I going to stand up the front, at least to fall on the beamer. I thought it'd be in the other room, and talk. And I couldn't even write the email to say, yes, I'll do it. I said to David, how do I say yes? And he actually wrote it for me. Because, you see, when I grew up, you weren't allowed to say no to anything. Intellectually, I knew it'd be okay with Kim if I said no. You wouldn't even know, so it wouldn't matter to you. But emotionally, I couldn't. It was an obligation. It was a difficult responsibility. So at 2:55 a.m, I was awake thinking, what am I going to talk about? And by 3:30, I had gone over a million different things. And at 4:10, the light bulb went off. What on earth am I worrying about? I'm a Jew, and I'm talking to Jews. And who are Jews? They are these wonderful, beautiful people that I've been relating to for the last 5 years. I think the generosity, the compassion, the caring, the teaching, I could go on, is just fantastic. And I know that whatever I say here, I'm just going to be accepted, that this is where I'm at this time, and this is what I need to say. You have no idea what a gift that is. I grew up, Beck, I identify very strongly with you. You're at one end of your life, I'm at the other. But we have so much in common. I didn't grow up a Catholic, but I grew up in a Christian household, going to church every week, where we were not allowed to question. We were allowed to talk. We were allowed to talk, provided we said the right thing. The answers were given to us. And so the other gift is to come here and not only be required to question, but challenged to think for myself, to develop an understanding, to develop a relationship with God, with the community, with the wider world. It is an extraordinary and wonderful thing. My goal throughout my life is to be the best me I can be. And I think that I have been given little nudges, not knowings, but little nudges, which are sort of saying, are you ready yet? And I finally listened to that, and the miracle of miracles is that David was listening at the same time, so we came along together. But it was a separate journey, and it has been the most wonderful experience, because I think that Jews, the Jews I know, the Jews that have welcomed me, that that I just love greeting every time I walk in the door, that made me feel welcome. They're on the same path, you know. I look round and I could mention so many names of people here who have helped me on this journey, who've shown me what to do. We were given the Ten Commandments, we were given the Torah. That's our guidebook. But you're the guides. You're the ones who are saying it's possible to get there. And it's possible to find your own journey. There is a freedom within the restrictions of all those mitzvahs and commandments. There's a freedom to be the best person you can be, to make the best contribution you can be, and ultimately to work towards that wonderful concept of tikkun olam. And so it's an honour, it's a privilege, and it's an absolute joy, and I thank every one of you. Thank you.
Ella Sandler.
Like you all said, when I first got the call from Kim asking me to talk about chosenness, I also was really hesitant because I've kind of, in the last few years, perceived chosenness as ethnocentrism and entitlement, and therefore just chose to reject it. I think that when we grew up, I went to King David, and it was a very progressive Jewish education, obviously, and as I was starting to learn about Judaism in the younger years, we learnt about the Jews being the chosen people, and then I started to question it as we got older, and then I started to question lots of parts about Judaism, and chosenness was one of those that I just rejected. And I was told that, you know, progressive Jews don't always believe in chosenness, and that kind of validated my feelings of unease. But then I did a bit of research and spoke to a few people, and I think I've gained a new understanding of chosenness. I don't know if I have a set opinion on it yet, but chosenness, according to Stephen Fush, who's a progressive Jewish thinker, he spoke about chosenness and the concept of, you know, chosenness within Judaism as choosing to be chosen is believing that God cares deeply about the choices that we make. And in my head, that feels so full of meaning. That makes sense that people feel like feeling chosen is a relevant part of their Judaism, because it actually adds meaning to your Judaism and kind of puts it all in the context of, you know, every decision that you make is in the context of God and in the context of religion and being better. And the second thing that I consulted is today I actually had lunch at my Orthodox friend, and I was talking to her brother, who's a very, very Orthodox Jew, and he was saying that he believes that he was chosen to be on this earth to fulfill God's mitzvot. And that shocked me, because when I was thinking about fulfilling, I wasn't even thinking about God. I was thinking about fulfilling my personal connection with Judaism and my place in the world. And it was just an interesting experience where his Judaism and my Judaism was so connected but also so different. But yeah, to understand that he felt chosen to do the things that he wanted to do to serve God, it made sense that chosenness gives you that meaning. It heightens your sense of responsibility in the sense that you have to actually, you're doing it for a bigger purpose and not just for yourself. And as I was driving home from my Orthodox friend's house, I was thinking about how chosenness can be really empowering for people. For me, I found it to be a little bit disempowering initially, but if you think that feeling like you're chosen and feeling like there's intention with where you've been put in the world or what demographic or whatever, and that propels you to do the things that you want to do and be the best person that you can be and fulfill God or fulfill the world or fulfill whatever you need to do, then good on you. I think that we should feel that we're chosen. I think that our understanding of anything Jewish is very malleable as progressive Jews, and if we feel that if we feel that we're chosen, then what's to stop that? And if that empowers us and that connects us to Judaism, then we should engage with those feelings and nourish them, because if you feel chosen, then you feel chosen, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Ezra.
Just setting myself a stopwatch so I don't talk for too long. Apparently I have a habit of doing that. I do live my life. So my name, some of you know me as Robert, others of you know me as Ezra. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and that will be relevant in a minute. So when Kim emailed me earlier in the week and asked me to speak, it was also late in the evening and I stayed up very late as well, Glenda, so thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only person who did that, mulling over what I was going to say. And I struggle with the notion of chosenness. I struggle with the notion of chosenness in respect of having been chosen for a reason, because I'm different or because I'm special, which I'd like to think I am, but not above anyone else. More so what resonates with me is the notion of chosenness as a verb. I choose to. So what I want to talk about this evening is that which governed my choice to be Jewish, because I am currently converting, I'm a Jew by choice, and there are a number of reasons for that. There are three main reasons that coming to Judaism resonated with me and continues to resonate with me. The first is diversity, the second is intentionality, and the third is something I can't quite come up with a canny word for, but I'm going to call being comfortable in the uncomfortable. The first one, diversity. I occupy a number of different positions in communities, as in I sit in a various number of spaces. We all sit here in a Jewish space. I also sit in a queer space, and I sit in a trans space, which is where the pronouns come from. So I'm part of a number of different communities, and it's hard to find communities where all of you is accepted for who you are. The more different you are from what we might call the baseline, what's to be expected, the harder it is sometimes to find a space where all of you is accepted. I, like other speakers tonight, came from a Christian background, and it was a fairly tame Christian background, but you still rubbed up against some challenges growing up in terms of who I was, how I identified, and how that was accepted. In coming into a Jewish space, I have found overwhelming acceptance, love and support. The hilarious fact of the matter is that the number of friends I have who are queer and trans has skyrocketed since I came into Jewish spaces, because apparently we're all here. I can see some waving in the crowd and I'm loving it. So that's been one really powerful and amazing facet of coming to community for me. As I'm converting and choosing things like choosing a name, and the name that I've chosen as my Hebrew name, obviously, is Ezra, and I am choosing to start to go by that in my daily life as a reflection of not only being Jewish, but of the other facets of my identity. Those of you who've ever met a trans person may realise that we choose to change our names as we transition. That Crib Notes version is part of why I've done that. So that's part one. Part two is intentionality. And this is something that Gersh, I'm looking right at you right now, have spoken about a lot in our Melton course, which we've just concluded, which was great. You should all sign up, doing an unofficial plug. Do I get a discount for that? Joking. Something we talk about a lot is intentionality. The intentions you set in coming to practice and coming to community. What really resonated for me here, and it's something, Glenda, that you hinted at, I can't see you, but there you are, was the ability to question. That goes alongside, I think, choice. The ability to question things. I remember looking Michelle Lelum, who's my sponsoring rabbi, in the eye a couple of months ago and said, I had a chicken burger with some cheese on it this afternoon. And he went, well, kosher. Not to tell me that I was doing something wrong, but went, okay, why? I said, well, I read that text by Randban and it really didn't make much sense to me, because I can read a label on packaging and I know that chicken isn't meat and I can't milk it. That led to about a 20-minute conversation. And I went home and had another chicken burger, because apparently I'm not watching my weight at the moment. That's another story. So the ability to make choices, informed choices, and set intentions is at the core of what really resonated for me with Judaism, coming from a background where I wasn't allowed to do that. The third point, being comfortable in the uncomfortable. A friend of mine pointed out to me a few months ago that the Torah is littered with contradictions. Not to say it's wrong, not going to go there, but it does have contradictions, and that so much of our practice, so much of our faith, so many of our ideas contradict each other. And this isn't just true of Judaism, but the gift of being Jewish, of choosing to be Jewish, is the ability to be okay with that. Coming back again to being queer, there's a lot of contradiction that goes along with identity. And it's particularly in terms of transitioning, working out who you are as you transition from one space to the other through liminal spaces, figuring things out, trying things out, realizing what doesn't work, taking a step back and trying something else out. There's a lot to be said for being okay with being uncomfortable. And one of the gifts that I've gotten out of my journey here over the past 3 years, 2.5 years, has been the ability to be comfortable in those spaces. So coming to Jewish community has been transformative in all three of those ways. And I think at the core of that transformation is the fact that it's a choice. Kim, you once said in class a few weeks ago that you don't believe that choosing is an act that just Jews by choice make. It's born Jews and Jews by choice, that all of us who are sitting here tonight have made a choice. It's cold outside, we could be at home watching, it's not Game of Thrones now, it's something else. We could be watching something on TV, we wouldn't have to be here and we'd be warm. We've all chosen to be here. So that's the root of chosenness. It's an action, it's an intention. It's bringing everyone in. And it's being okay when things rub up against each other in not quite the right way, but we'll have to learn to live with it. Thank you.
I didn't ask our panelists this, or not panelists, but speakers, because you're not really on a panel ahead of things. But are you okay if you get a couple of questions? We only have time for about 3 or 4 questions. But would anybody like to ask a question on anything that you've heard so far? You don't have to. I'm putting you on the spot. Ruja. So can I give you a microphone? I need to give you a microphone.
Yes, I've been deeply moved by your everybody's contribution, but I particularly want to welcome our Jews by Choice because it's been really exciting to hear your stories, and I think we're so lucky to have you. Well,
Anybody else? Brenda, here. Please take that.
Beth, may I ask about the headdress? It's something I know nothing about.
No worries. So this is called the tichel. You'll see it a lot in Orthodox communities. Married women will cover their hair. But the reason I wear it isn't because I'm married. It's something that I've found that I connect with, that is a physical thing that I do just on Shabbat, that I can have a physical connection to my beliefs and separates my week to now, and just something that I can call my own, that I discovered, that I discovered without it being told this is what I have to do to be Jewish or anything. It's just something I discovered myself and decided to wear. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, Ezra, can I ask you the same question?
We're conveniently sitting next to each other. Hilariously, we really should. Hilariously, I picked this up from Beth. I was at a wedding with Beth in rural southern Texas, a Jewish wedding, and I decided to try it on. Many of the same reasons resonate for me. Obviously, for myself, as I was very subtly alluding to just before, to do with my gender identity and journey. And that's a really powerful way for me to engage with that in a Jewish space, because there's a lot of crossover.
Do you wear it all the time, or is it just for Shabbat?
For a while, it was all the time, which had some great practical outcomes in terms of having to remember to brush my hair in the morning. But nowadays, it is a Shabbat experience, which I have come to really enjoy and appreciate, much the same reasons as Beth. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy.
I just want to bring another idea to all of this. While I was working for many, many years, I'd have all these customers coming in. In my window, my grandchildren would often do things like a drawing of challah and candles, etc., for the main holidays, and people would come in and ask me, well, what's all this about? I had another Jewish lady working with me, and she was quite critical of the time I spent telling people what the holidays were about. Not so much that we are chosen, but people wanted to know, why are we different? Not just in the concept of being chosen, but why are we different? And I would say, why? And they would say, well, you know, nearly all the doctors are Jewish, and all these bank presidents and this and that and the other. And they didn't say it from an anti-Semitic way, but just a matter of fact. And I used to explain to them that one of the very first things that most European Jews did is they made sure that their children went to Heder, they learned to read so that they could follow the Torah. And that also made them ambitious in reading and exploring and learning. And the other thing was that you can see in history, because in many of the courts right around Europe, it was always Jews who were either treasurers or advisors or something of that ilk. So I think that we've been given the choice of learning, of education, and that is our biggest treasure. And when you look at the problems around the world today, it's mainly because of lack of education. And I think that that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. We are going to continue with the second part of our cheesecake competition, then we'll come back. Remember, 10 minutes. Let's try to be true to the 10 minutes. 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. Thank you.
Again, my friends, just a reminder, we do not subscribe to the notion of vote early, vote often. You have 3 votes. Just 3 votes. If you like one of them, give it a couple of votes. You can vote for 1 cake 3 times. You just can't vote for 3 cakes 3 times. Put this. Wandering over just to check how the scoring's going. Some of these cups are running over. Some of these cups are running under. Rabbi, do you think we're going to need to actually have an official count, or is there going to be a visible victory?
I think it may be a visible victory.
It's looking pretty strong to me. The general sign of a cheesecake being liked is when someone starts licking the knife.
Friends, 2 more minutes, please. 2 more minutes. I haven't had.
I'm just walking and stealing all the fruit off the cheesecakes. Sorry.
Okay, friends, if we could move on over. The next part of our program is to hear from 3 established members of our Jewish community who are involved in different organizations. The one you know quite well, you've heard of him before, Rabbi Gersh Lazaro. So Gersh will be our second speaker. Our first speaker is Sidra Mashinsky, who's a member of the Progressive Jewish community, but she's here, part of her role here tonight is that she's also the head of Jewish life at the King David School. And then we've got Bernard Korbman, who's also a scholar and a mensch within the Jewish community. Bernard is going to go last, been involved in the Shoah Center and for the Center for Polish Jews, right? Either one. No. Gersh is No, Sidra wants to start. I don't mind. Nobody can decide who's going first.
I would like to because I'm waning.
You're waning.
I'm waning, but I'll begin with the presentation.
Is your mic on?
It will be in a second. Thank you very much. We are going to continue. Oh, maybe it was on. I just turned it off. Now it's on. Begin with an overwhelming presentation. The expression, "My cup runneth over," except it's not my cup, Margaret, it's yours. So, I'd like to invite you up for the very prestigious presentation of our No Expenses Spared. Was there anyone who assisted you in the production of these extraordinary cheesecakes? No. So then there's only one need for a medal. I was about to be generous and offer it. I'm doing a very good job of removing these medals.
You could just give it all to Margaret and she
Mazel tov! Mazel tov! Mazel tov! It was number 3. There was the most of it. That may be a ploy. Bring a bigger cheesecake, more people will vote for you. But I also had a lovely taste of it and I think it was lovely, so thank you. And I want to thank everyone that got into the festival by bringing, by sharing, by tasting, by judging. That's what Torah is about. It's a living tradition. And if you didn't get enough dairy, I should say there will be more at Kiddush tomorrow morning. It will be different dairy because you did a very good job of eating all the dairy we had today, including all of our pizza and all of our ice cream at the Ice Cream Sunday. But if you want more ice cream, next door would love to see you at what time? 4 p.m. at Betty's Burgers, who make the best milkshakes on Chapel Street. There'll be plenty of time to rest after Yom Tov services tomorrow morning before getting another milkshake. But we continue our conversation of chosenness, and I thank my co-panelists in this last session for letting me push in. Bernard already offered to let me go last, so as rabbi of congregation I can get final word. But I'm waning, and I'm not so proud to not admit that I'm waning, but I'm so glad to be here, so I'm going to teach first. And within that, in this exploration of chosenness, I spent a lot of time, much like the speakers we've had the privilege of being able to hear, thinking about how to approach it. What entrance, what pathway should or could I take into this question? And within the conversations, it was remarkable for me to hear one of my former students who's moved on to another part of her evening of learning, Ella, who I taught in Year 7 at the King David School, talk about how much she grappled with it and how difficult it was and how she really struggled. She didn't label it, but I remember the conversation in Year 7, really struggled with those Torah blessings that Tammy introduced us to and didn't know what to make of those Torah blessings and that sense of particularism in a tradition that was so universal. And then I think about how many people I've had the opportunity to engage in conversation with people who in this age, and I agree, it was said earlier by another speaker as well, this age where we are all, in fact, Jews by choice. Because we no longer, at least in this extraordinary country of ours, have people telling us that we have to be Jewish because we were born Jewish. And so we make an active choice to practice, to connect with our history and our heritage. And as a representative of community, one of my great privileges is finding people who are looking to reconnect with their history and heritage, who aren't just choosing by rote, but are choosing by reimagination. And the interplay of those is truly exceptional. So with all of that kind of playing around in my head, I asked myself, what is it that I am going to speak and teach about this evening? What is, as I said, my derech, my drush, my path, my interpretation? And it comes to a possibly postmodern reading of the notion of chosen, chosenness, chosen ones. Or perhaps it's an authentic reading of the original definition of chosenness, but one that we can only get to because we've journeyed sufficiently down the Jewish journey. We've wandered enough years and enough time from Sinai to have the ability, the context, the perspective to understand the way it was always intended. As a progressive Jew who believes in continuous revelation rather than revelation as a historical event, I like the latter. It makes my choices as relevant as those that our sainted ancestors made when they stood at the mountain. It made the feelings that they that swelled up within them as they crossed the oceans seem like the things that I feel and the things that I think. And so I have 3 texts, and I've only made a few copies because I think sharing is caring and I like trees. Thank you. But I'll ask if we can just make these kind of wander down. And there are 3 different texts. The first is from a teacher of mine, a classmate of mine and a teacher of mine, Rabbi Jill Jacobs. The second is a Talmudic text. And the third is an interpretation from a midrash from Parasha Mishpatim. I don't think these 3 texts have found themselves on the same page previously, because it took a weird and wonderful journey that I went on over the last few weeks to find them and then to bring them together. Because what is my drush? My drush is that, as you've heard from other perspectives, we were not chosen, but rather we were challenged to choose. We were challenged to create a community, a mindset, an approach to life that had active choice at its core. Some people this evening describe that as questioning rather than answering. Some people describe that from your experience in work of taking the time to explain. Others use different expressions. Rabbi Jill Jacobs provides a really interesting introduction. I'm going to ask people to share the other readings, but I'll start with Jill's. It is no accident that the Jewish people call themselves Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, rather than Da'at Yisrael, or the religion of Israel. A sense of peoplehood has long been the defining characteristic of the Jews. Accordingly, the central experience of Jewish history, the only event that demands an annual retelling, is the Exodus from Egypt. Though wrapped up in an encounter of divinity, the Exodus, it was primarily an experience of national liberation, rather than a moment of religious awakening. Some of you heard me say this last night. Some of you heard me say it a few hours ago in Ma'ariv tonight. And some of you have wandered in the hours since. And so I'll repeat it a third time. When we talk about our observances and our holidays, we often water it down to this three-part expression: they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. It works as we look around the synagogue and the stories of our various holidays and festivals almost every single time. But not on Shavuot. Not on this holiday, because it's different. They didn't try to kill us. There was no conflict, and as such there was no victory, but thank God there's plenty of food. What stands this holiday out is this notion not only of national liberation, but national formation, and with it, transformation. This holiday, our wandering out of slavery into the freedom to be ourselves and pursue our future, makes this holiday so fundamentally different to so many of our other observances. Yes, it would be naive to simplify it down to the extent where we say that it doesn't have a sense of religious awakening. But it doesn't take great history scholars to also understand that a lot of that religious awakening was rabbinic re-visioning of history, as they tried and continue to try to place the rabbinic voice at the center of our identity when it's always just been part of who we are. But it's an important part. So what is it that we are choosing? If it's not a religious awakening, if it's not necessarily a direct connection to God and God's commandments, what is it that we are choosing? And so I found it remarkably surprising. I have to be honest, I was actually shocked when I found this second text on this page. Because I was looking for it. I could felt it in my core. It defined my understanding of choice. I just didn't expect it to come out of the Talmud. I didn't expect it to come out of the rabbis of the 2nd and the 3rd century who were trying to reframe the Jewish world in their mind. And so in Sanhedrin, they provide for me what I believe is a really interesting idea of what it is that we're choosing. Is there someone who's willing to share this reading with us? It's not difficult, and I'll accept it in the English. I'll welcome it, in fact, in English at this hour. Thank you. Microphone's on.
A Talmud Chacham, Torah scholar, is not allowed to live in a city that does not have these 10 things: a Beit Din, law court, that metes out punishments, a tzedakah fund that is collected by 2 people and distributed by 3, a synagogue, a bathhouse, mikveh, a bathroom, a doctor, a craftsperson, a bloodletter, some versions add a butcher, and a teacher of children.
Okay, I know it's late, but let's try and unpack this list, because it's not what I expected. What does this list tell us? What is this text teaching? What are one of the things? There could be many answers to this question. What do you mean by community faith? We shouldn't live somewhere where there aren't others, where there aren't people who are tasked with certain roles in order to provide the community, the framework for community. A beautiful introduction to this text. Thank you for that. And then we can delve a little deeper, because in the list that is provided there, we get some sense of an understanding of what that community should or could be.
That someone who's a Talmud Chacham, somebody who's a spiritual person, shouldn't just live in a community with other spiritual people, but should be part of the real world.
Lo b'shamayim. It's not solely in the heavens, or in the ivory towers, or in the rabbinic seminaries. Any other comments or observations? So let me ask you a question about this text. What is the Talmud Chacham choosing? To be an example. Example to whom first? Let's go there before we get to the second part of your comment.
To other people, to show them what it is to be righteous, to do the right thing.
So to demonstrate and to model to others what it is to act or to be. I think that's one of the things that they're choosing. Certainly in this text, but I think there perhaps might be a little bit more there.
A Torah scholar, I feel, is one who spends their time reading and learning and perhaps criticising or seeing other venues within the verses and be open to share them with other people.
I think that's a very strong interpretation, and we start to build up what the sense of both an idealized Torah scholar is, as well as what the role of this idealized character is within the placing community. And within that there is choice.
What really jumped out to me as we were reading through the list itself was how much what's listed there. It's a really interesting list and a really useful list if you want to keep the mitzvot, particularly at the time this was written, which I'm assuming the 4th century. So you have the blood letter, so you're not going to be eating unkosher meat. You have a tzedakah fund, so you're fulfilling the mitzvah of tzedakah. You've got the mikveh, and you've got other things relating to education and cleanliness and other issues that really come through, and the expectations of what it is to lead a Jewish life. All the way through this list. They're not just there for any old reason, they're there because they're enabling this person to make choices about leading a Jewish life.
Ezra, it's so interesting to hear you make those observations, and I'm sure they're shared by others. I heard people nodding. I saw people nodding and heard people umming as you made them. I read the text entirely differently. I appreciate it, and I'm grateful, and I thank you for your drush, because your presentation, and I don't want to simplify it too much, as I heard it, was what a wonderful dogma and example of the things that you need to lead a meaningful, intentional Jewish life. Observe the mitzvot and the infrastructure that an observant, engaged, active Jew requires. My reading of that was from the exact other side of the coin. I can't be an observing, active, engaged Jew without an awareness of what's happening in the world around me. I can't, no matter how knowledgeable or how affluent or how comfortable I am, exist in isolation. If I want to be a Jew, I need to know about my faith, my history, my practices, as well as the needs and wants of my neighbours. And they are equally important to each other. And I think that was my surprise. Because the rabbis who wrote the blessing that told us as we stand at Torah and give thanks for being chosen were the same people that crafted this text. Those loud voices who for a period of time that has echoed through the centuries, who have said that our tradition is particular and has at its core a very defined, very recognizable particularism, also came here to say the only way we can be particular is because we live in a universal world and we exist in relationship, and those worlds are interrelated and co-related. And so I go to my third and final text. It is a drush, a commentary on Parasha Mishpatim. Parasha Mishpatim, known well to many of us because it's as legalistic, full of rules and regulations as we could possibly imagine. One of the best examples of the stated black fire, the ink on the page of what it is we should be doing as Jews, what we were chosen for, if you want to use that language. Not language I use readily. And it is a mixed text. It draws on a number of sources. Brian, was that? I'll happily read it. I saw the hand kind of flicker up there. Thank you.
Midrash Tehumah, Parshat Mishpatim 2. With justice, a king sustains the earth, but a fraudulent Terumah person destroys it, from Proverbs. What does this verse mean? With the justice that the king does, he sustains the earth, but the fraudulent person destroys it. If one makes oneself like Terumah, a portion of produce that is set aside as an offering, set aside in the corner of the house and says, "Why should I trouble myself for the community? What's in it for me to take part in their disputes? Why should I listen to their voices? I'm fine without this. This person destroys the world." This is the meaning of the fraudulent person who destroys the world.
So we're going to pause there for a second with a very quick explanation as the rabbi gives me 5 minutes from the back of the room. Truma is a term to describe one of the offerings that one would take, particularly we talk about this as being Chag HaBikurim, the festival of our first fruits, which you take from your portion and set it aside for either sacrifice or for the priests or the like, when you remove from yourself and set aside. The analogy being used in the text here is if we can do that with objects, with fruit, with possessions, we can also do that with our actions. That's what the application of the term Truma is. And we move now from Kliya Drush to Agadah, to telling a story.
This is the story of Rav Asi, that when he was dying, his nephew entered and found him crying. He said to him, "Why are you crying? Is there any Torah that you did not study and teach to others? Look, your students sit before you. Are there any acts of loving kindness that you did not do? Furthermore, despite your stature, you humbled yourself and you stayed far from disputes and did not allow yourself to be appointed over the affairs of the community." Rav Asi replied, "My son, this is why I'm crying. What if I am asked to account for the fact that I was able to arbitrate disputes among the people of Israel and did not? This is the meaning of the fraudulent person who destroys the world."
What is it that I contend, thank you, we were chosen for, we are chosen for, is not to be the celebrators of a particular tradition that sets us aside as better than or other than everyone else. That narrative, which has been popularized and normalized both by rabbinic voices within our tradition, as well as other forces within other traditions that have set us aside, either theologically, culturally, historically, and some other words. That narrative certainly is dominant. It has been the loudest voice that we have heard, at least for the last 2,000 years. That notion of chosenness as other, chosenness as better, chosenness as different. My contention, the contention that I find from my teachers and from this rabbinic text, is that we were chosen to be the exact opposite. not to sit around the outside or the periphery, but to find our way to the core of humanity, to inspire it, to shape it, and to uplift it. We were not set aside, but rather placed within. That is what we were chosen to do, and that is what we were chosen to be. My great frustration, however, is I don't think that the entirety of the Jewish world, or even the majority of the Jewish world, have any real sense of that chosenness, or what our purpose is. I was not chosen to fulfill God's mitzvot. I was chosen by God to partner in the fulfillment of this creation. It is a very different relationship. And how do I do it? I do it by not making myself better or louder or different to the other, but I do it, as the rabbis teach me in the Babylonian Talmud, by putting myself in the community, building around myself all of the infrastructures and supports that I need, and contributing to the others and providing them with the supports that they need, so that we can truly be a sacred community aspiring on a sacred journey. We are not Da'at Yisrael. We are not the religion of Israel. We have never called ourselves Da'at Yisrael. We are Am Yisrael because our being is in community and is in belonging. Chag Shavuot Sameach. Or do you want to use that one? Do you want to? I think I turned it off.
All right, Chag Sameach. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry that I came a bit late to the party because I was at another Tikkun Lel, so I hope that what I'm saying doesn't overlap too much with what you're saying. It's rather just part of what looks like has been and will be a very rich evening of exploration of chosenness. So I know you've already looked at the Torah blessing, Asher Bachar Banu has chosen us, and I guess my focus is really, what does it mean to be a people of a God who chooses? Just like Abraham at the start of the story is chosen, is called, and we're not really given any explanation. We get the same happening at Sinai, that we're just kind of told about this call, about this election, except it's now extended to a national level and the terms of the covenant become much clearer. And we could have been told that it was simply God's wish that we be his people. And the start of that key passage of Exodus, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. That's a kind of summons. And that could have been enough to seal the relationship between us and God. Just, you're it. Done. But we're actually told, as it continues, that this is a choice on God's part. Then if you will obey me, faithfully keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the people. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So we get the summons, and then we get that concept on God's behalf that God is doing some choosing. And this implies that God had other options and that God had freedom. And it's for all sort of the problematic sides of choice and particularism and ideas that you've explored tonight. I think it's also a gift to know that we have been chosen by God. In a twist on what Rabbi Akiva says about the creation of humanity, where he says blessed is humanity for being created in the image of God. Even more blessed, even more beloved to be told of having been so created. We didn't need to know that. Then I think we can apply that here. So beloved is Israel, that we were chosen, and even more beloved that we were told that we were chosen. And as you may have already talked about, it wasn't clear that it was going to be the people of Israel who would be chosen. And there are certainly different midrashim and stories about God offering the Torah to other nations, to the descendants of Esav, to Moab, to Ammon, to the descendants of Ishmael, and each time going around and saying, would you like the Torah? Would you like to be my chosen people? And for various reasons, not very complimentary to these nations, they say, no, this is not for us. We enjoy our life of bloodshed or depravities of different kinds. And this account, it's seen as very virtuous on the part of the people of Israel, that we say Naaseh v'nishma, or that we will listen and then we will do and then we will listen. We just take it all on, and we're so enthusiastic and so open and so full of faith that we happily take on Torah. There is another kind of opposite tradition that actually we were chosen because we were the most stubborn and rebellious of all the nations. And in the Talmud it says, for what reason, asked the great Tana Rabbi Meir, was the Torah given to the Jewish people? And he says it is because we are impudent. And we have a really hard time following laws and respecting God. And so we need this fiery law, strict and punitive, to bring us into line. Another rabbi, Shimon ben Lakish, says there are 3 impudent ones: the Jewish people among the nations, the dog among the animals, and the rooster among birds. And were not for the Torah, no one would be able to live with us, says the Talmud. So this idea of choice is not necessarily, I'm sure you've discussed, about any kind of superiority. In fact, it could be about our very inferiority and need for this framework. And of course there are other interpretations that suggest that we're chosen because of Abraham being the first to acknowledge God as the source of all things, or because of our particular vulnerability and powerlessness and God's identification of a people in need. And I guess in the end, there are so many interpretations and they vary, completely divergent, but the point is that God is making a choice, that there are other options. And I guess for me tonight it's about, the heart of chosenness is we are the people of a choosing God. And of course we're not in the Torah the only time we see God choosing. And the Hebrew Bahar suggests elect. The Hebrew term for elections in political times now comes from the same word. But to Bahar, to choose, is also to love, to take delight in, to refine, to test, to bring near, to single out, to sanctify, many connotations. And we see in the Torah that God chooses not only us, but chooses the land of Israel, chooses Jerusalem, chooses the site of the temple, chooses the Levites and the priesthood to serve as the officials, chooses the prophets, chooses King David. So this is a God who we're being communicated often about God's capacity for choice. And perhaps what's in it for us, and to link with certainly what Rabbi Gersh just said and others, is that this idea that God is modelling to us the essential attributes of choice and that it's okay and important to be making choices. To be a member of the chosen people is to be a member of a people that is free to choose, a choosing people, a people who believes in choice. The concept of Bechira Chofshit, of free choice, is deeply embedded in our concept of human nature. That's what set us aside, that is what commentators understand as to being created in the image of God, is to have intelligence, not to have to function on instinct and impulse, but at every moment to be able to choose between right and wrong, between Yetzer Hara, Yetzer HaTov, to be guided in our choices by Torah. And while our understanding today is that it's not that simple, it's not that black and white, the concept of choice is quite fraught. Judaism does insist that ultimately we do have this capacity, and it's what singles us out from humanity. And so for Shavuot, that is this moment in time that marks 50 days from the departure, the exodus to Sinai and receiving Torah, is that was not a journey from servitude to freedom, but of this narrowness, which is Mitzrayim, this narrow place, where there's not much latitude to choice, from narrowness to choice, rather than just slavery to freedom. And what is being offered through Torah is choice. With the very terms, if this, then that. And the people take that on, which doesn't mean that anything goes, that there aren't clear right or wrongs or a desired direction, but that choice is at the heart of it. And perhaps one of the key, what some people say is really what the Torah is all about, is Dvarim, where Moshe, before the people are about to enter the land of Israel, says, I call heaven and earth today to witness that I have placed before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life. Choose that you and your seed shall live. And this choice of life is intimately bound up with Torah. It is our Es Chaim, our tree of life. No one forces us to eat its fruit or to follow its paths. But we certainly will face consequences based on the choices we make. So again, perhaps to continue this idea that really it is choice that is at the heart of our relationship as a people and as individuals with God. The God who chooses allows us to be a people that chooses us out of love, chooses us with a certain sense of mission and responsibility, but also to give us that model of being a choosing people, to choose to live up to that potential of what God sees in us. And we know that we won't all make good choices, and the Torah is full of people who err along the way. Shavuot is also believed to be the birthday and the yahrzeit of King David. God could see into his heart right from the start, presumably knows of the choices he'll make, some good, some tragic, but that is the essence of what life is. Life synonymous with choice. So, Chag Sameach.
I better lay down my credentials. I guess you could say that I'm a mixed up hippie baby boomer who is totally confused, skeptical about religion, not necessarily spirituality, whose wife, Cheryl, keeps a kosher kitchen and tells me when I have a need to go to shul because I have to replenish my Yiddishkeit. So that's my commitment to Judaism. It's also important to know, I suppose, because what I'm going to say is going to be fairly contentious, is that my background is in philosophy. My dear late father said, Bernard, that's why you're so full of BS and, your poor students. A little story, I was at Yad Vashem a number of years ago and I was actually giving some workshops, and I found myself sitting next to Rabbi Israel Lau. And I said to him, we became fairly intimate in terms of the conversation, and I said to him, Rabbi, I want so hard to believe. I really, really do. I envy people who believe. I just can't bring myself to it. And he asked me what I had studied and so on, and I said philosophy. And he said, Bernard, from here down to your toes, you're a mensch. Your only problem is, and he gave me a punch right there. And maybe he's right, because my contention about tonight's topic is that whether God chose us or we chose God, either way it was a bad deal. What does it mean to be chosen? Well, to be chosen can have a range of meanings, but in all cases it means to be singled out and preferred above others. To be chosen communicates a sense of something that is extraordinary. It doesn't matter what the task is. You can be chosen to be wonderful and love your fellow man and so on, but the fact that you were chosen makes you extraordinary. It makes you different from others. And that what is assumed in this sense is that God has done the choosing, and the reward is something that is unequaled for what could be possibly equal to being divinely ordained happiness, to be chosen by God. But the idea of chosenness was a universal idea, both in the ancient Near East as well as globally. It's not something that was Jewish. Local deities protected their people, united them, and provided comfort, both spiritual and physical, and gave them meaning and understanding to the world around them. If we examine the phenomenon of chosenness in the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the following need to be considered: revelation, covenant, redemption, salvation, and prophecy, as these are the fundamental theological cogs which have been responsible for the friction of the past 2,000 years, which has led to constant warfare and destruction. We all know the story of chosenness in terms of us as Jews, so let me quickly talk very briefly about chosenness from a Christian perspective. The Christian church was a movement that had its roots, its core, in Judaism. Now, when someone tries to establish a new religion, because the Jews would not accept the notion of Christ the Messiah, it is common to attack that new religion. And the way of attacking the new religion is to call it a cult, trying to delegitimize that particular religion, and to say that it operates outside the realm of reality. I heard someone say over there when they were tasting the cheesecake, there must be something to this, us being chosen, because the hard right-wing Christians say we're chosen. Well, we have to understand why the hard right Christians say we're chosen. And I always say to people, not just about this, but always be very careful about who you go to bed with when you make allies. Of course we're chosen by the hard right Christian. because to prove his legitimacy, to prove the prophecy of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, Christianity had to make a link. The Messiah was to come from the house of David. The Messiah had certain obligations to fulfill. And therefore, as I said, to legitimize Jesus as the new Messiah and the beginning of the new church, very strong motifs from the Christian religion, from the Jewish religions, had to be imported. And one of the most important motifs was the idea of chosenness. Therefore, the other interesting reason is, why is there such anti-Semitic rhetoric in the New Testament, especially John? It's not a difficult question to answer. When two religions oppose one another, they treat one another like dirt. And on both sides, the polemic of the Jews and the polemic of the Christians, when they were establishing themselves, obviously put a lot of BS, as my father would say, on one another. And therefore, as a reaction to the way that Jews, refused to accept the messiahship of Jesus, and also the way Christians had suffered terribly by the Romans, it is no wonder that as the religion evolved, the last of the Gospels is more anti-Semitic than the others. Now, the Gentiles around the world were given a new covenant under Christianity, and this covenant differed in the sense that it was seen as a much more personal covenant. You didn't have to eat kosher, you didn't have to follow all certain laws to be part of God's people. So it was very attractive from that point of view, and very welcoming. And you hear many people who don't understand Judaism very well say, oh yes, but Jesus is much more of a personal God. And that is certainly the way it was translated in the very early days of the church. The fight between Christianity and Judaism, of course, led to the superseding or supersession of the Hebrew Bible. But to supersede something, you have to have the roots in that original so that it becomes the new. The Quran is different. When we looked at the concept of chosenness in the Quran, because it too took from the Hebrew Bible many of its motifs, it wasn't trying to prove that it supersedes Christianity. The Quran came onto a market that already had a number of monotheistic churches, beliefs, mainly Judaism and Christianity. So the word Quran itself actually means correction. It was recited through the Archangel Gabriel to Muhammad to bring back on the righteous path those who had not followed either Judaism properly, Christianity properly, or the polytheists of the area around. Abraham is depicted in the Quran as establishing the foundation of Islam's holiest shrine in Mecca, along with his son Ishmael. Again, if we were to go into a deeper history, we can see all the connections that are there. My problem is
Why would a loving God not find a way to allow all of humankind to benefit directly from engagement with the divine? Certainly, chosenness makes us feel special, superior, gives us hope when things are bad. When we're conquered or oppressed, we pray to God. Yet God doesn't interfere. He doesn't interfere in human affairs. We can talk about something, somebody was sick, the doctor said they had 3 months to live, and my God, they're still alive 3 years later. Oh, what a miracle. I'm sorry, I'm rather sceptical about that being God all of a sudden turned around, looked down and said, you can die, I'm going to perform a miracle here. I guess it's my philosophical background, but I just find that really difficult to come to terms with. The Holocaust to me and to my parents, and perhaps that's why I have this idea, is where was God during the Holocaust? And please don't give me the sort of rather pathetic answer. The real question is, where was humanity during the Holocaust? Well, we know where humanity was and we know where humanity is. And it wasn't up to humanity to save the Jewish people. And furthermore, some of our rabbis from the Orthodox communities told us it's because we lost our way as a people. And this was a way to reawaken us to get back to God. If this sort of vengeful God chooses me, I certainly would rather say, no, thank you, I reject your chosenness. The other thing is, why does God act like a Machiavellian sort of figure in the Bible? He seems to like to choose certain nations and individuals above others, a kind of divide and conquer. He sets the dysfunctional families of Genesis one against the other, setting individuals up for failure. One of my favourite characters in the Bible is Cain. I don't know why. Since I was a little kid and read the Bible, Cain, to me, my heart always went out to Cain. Why did God choose Abel? What was so bad about what the gift that Cain had offered? And then not only that, but to mark him for life. Why? I don't understand it. I've had rabbis give me their ideas about it and so on, but for some reason I must be remedial when it comes to things like that because they never sink in. The other one I really love is the story of Job. That's a fantastic story. The devil, Satan, comes up to God and says, I bet you that of all the holiest and most devout people amongst your people, I can make him sin. I can make him not sin, but I can make him curse you. And so the two have a bet. And God sends all these sorts of things, plagues, kills his children, and Job doesn't curse him. So God wins the bet. And to make it up to Job, he gives him new children and a few more sheep than he had before. That is real justice. People were talking about the Exodus before, getting to Sinai. When we were at Sinai, God says, Go into this land and it's yours. In today's terms, if I was going to talk in postmodernist terms, what about the indigenous people of those lands? This kind of, oh yeah, you know, they had a fairly brutal sort of system. Maybe they practiced incest or something, and that's not kosher. So yeah, we'll take over Canaan and we'll fight the Philistines. I will protect you against the Philistines, and so on. No wonder people hate us. Because when you read what's there, we have this God who almost on behalf of Israel makes some sort of imperialistic claims around the whole place. And then when we complain about people not liking us and about how brutal the Torah is, we don't think that the descendants of the Philistines or those from other areas that God gave to us might have a totally different story, a different narrative to the one we have. Don't those people have a right to zahor, remembrance, just as we have about our narrative? And again at Pesach, what a wonderful, calm little book the Haggadah is. I took you out. This is the God, of warrior God. I took you out. And I did this with outstretched arms. And I did that with a sword. And I opened the sea and I drowned the Egyptians. And then what do? During the rest of the Haggadah, we pray that God continues along this way to get rid of our enemies of now and the future. Now, of course, this is a very negative interpretation of all those things, but that's why Victor Meisner invited me. And that's why he left, because he was frightened of the repercussions of my little talk. However, I guess I want to finish off by quoting two things. Firstly, all the people who are in this congregation are very lucky, and I mean that sincerely. You live in a bubble of love. Those of you who are converting through this congregation have the most loving people at your side. Be warned, this is not the entire Jewish community. You have to listen to J.A. to hear how put down this congregation is, how this congregation is seen as self-hating Jews, anti-Zionists, not real Jews. They don't live in a real Jewish world. They are the new cult. That's what the Jewish community is like. It is as divided and horrific as any other community. And especially when we talk about Am Israel, it doesn't exist in the Australian Jewish community, unfortunately. And that's why you're lucky to be here. And my final thing is a quote from another hippie, Jewish hippie of the 60s, Bob Dylan. When in his song, With God on Our Side, he said, though they murdered 6 million, in the ovens they fried, now the Germans too have God on their side. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bernard, and thank you, Sidra, so much for presenting. I know you probably have somewhere that you've got to go to next. Victor had to go present, I think, at Habonim this evening. I hope you all agree with me that I think tonight has been a remarkable evening, an exceptionally diverse evening of stories, of opinions, and of learning. Thank you to Tammy Cohen and for coming back and being part of the first part of our session To our wonderful speakers who shared their personal experiences, I thank you deeply for your honesty and your openness in sharing what chosenness means to you. And to Bernard as well for your varied approach as well, and looking at all different things from the Christian right to the religious, and bringing in Quran to try to understand what chosenness, as well as Shoah, to try to understand what chosenness means. So the goal tonight was to share that there isn't one idea. There isn't one concept of what it means to be chosen, to be part of the chosen people, but to really open it up to say that there's more to discuss, there's more to learn. And just like the Jewish opinion, the Jewish people, as Bernard alluded to, there is more than one way to be Jewish, there's more than one way to understand what chosenness means. I thank you so much. Thank you to all of our cheesecake bakers. Mazel tov again to Margaret. Margaret, how many years have you won this? It's been 1 or 2, hasn't it? She's got a trophy wall of cheesecake competition. So, and thank you to everybody who helped make tonight so important, whether it was you involved in the family activities that started at 4:30. I'm sorry to those of you who missed me climbing Mount Sinai. I had a beard and everything. I think it's now on social media. Thanks everybody. Chag Sameach. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, we have services with Hallel and Yizkor, and then back into our regular schedule. Thank you so much. And as CSG invites us to do, please leave as quickly as possible, not to linger on the streets.